Hello, my name is Simon Adams of Moonstar Board Games. In this series, I like to take a look at games which I really like or even love, as is the case of this game, and to explain and to explore a little bit of why I have such strong feelings, so strong positive feelings about a particular game. This is not, and do not look at these, especially not this one, as how to play these games. These are not instructionals. These are high level, unscripted overviews, which I hope will encourage you to spend a little bit of time in exploring the games yourself and hopefully to pick up the games and support a publisher who is bringing entertainment, joy, and fun to the world. So today we have a big one, big one. We have Mansions of Madness second edition by Fantasy Flight Games. I have everything for this, and let me put my microphone here. I might be a little bit quiet for a second. I have the base game. I have I have everything. I have Sanctum of Twilight, Beyond the Threshold, Streets of Arkham, Horrific Journeys, Path of the Serpent. I also have oh shoot, what's it called? Valkyrie, the application that you can use to um, play people's built scenarios for this game. I have everything in here. I have painted. I can't show too many of the models, but I have painted a lot of this game. I have painted a lot of this game, and it's because I love it so much. Some of these models need to be re-glued, though. Unfortunately, they need to be re-glued. Here's what it is. Um, Mansions of Madness is a scenario-based adventure game. That's what it is. It's an adventure game, but that does the game a little bit of a disservice because each scenario can have you doing a variety of different things. You might be on a boat on in one particular scenario. You might be um, exploring a mansion. You might be trying to uncover uh, a murder. You can be potentially trying to stop a cult from bringing the star god Cthulhu to the planet. You can be doing a variety of things, but I would say on the whole, it's a scenario based, turn based adventure game which utilizes an app to play basically like the DM or the GM of the game. For me, if I was going to say what kind of, I think this game is great for everyone, but especially if you are a TTRPGer, I think Mansions of Madness will give you the same feeling of a full TTRPG campaign. Sorry, I just jumped because my cat. Is that you, Kiri? Pretty sure my cat just jumped. Um, it will give you the feeling of a full TTRPG, but within a few hours. It's not a short game, depending on the scenario. Depending on the scenario, it's not a short game. Some scenarios are very long. Most scenarios are probably like 2 to 3 to 4 hours, depending on how well everyone at the table knows the game. Uh, there are so many map tiles that it's as variable as you can imagine. A game has the potential or possibility of being. I have everything stored in these kinds of things to make setup and tear down a little bit easier, but I'm not going to say that this is a casual or light game. Not in terms of the rules, in terms of the setup, etc., etc. If you have, actually, let me rewind a little bit. So, you as the players, you are playing as a particular character who is trying to solve the scenario and the what the scenario wants from you, and you're always given kind of a pretty good idea of what you're trying to do. But each scenario will have different mechanics, which can influence how far you're walking, what actions you're doing, whether or not you find weapons in order to kill bad guys, etc., etc. So you are playing a named character, but you are making the story as you're going. And I will say for Mansions of Madness, which I can't say for a lot of games, um, I I have stories that we made from this game, playing scenarios. The stories that have arisen as a result of our actions and our interaction with the game have created their own memorable meta moments from this game, to the point where we have now some lingo and discourse within our group. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, that now translates to other games where we'll say, "Oh, you're doing this." Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but uh, because the game is a dice game, and you will hopefully have already, if not will in the future, learn from at least watching my appreciation of the games, that I love dice rolling. I think dice tell stories, and when dice are hot, then you have great stories, and when dice are rolling poorly, you get better stories. Okay, and these are not forgiving dice. These are unforgiving dice in the extreme, to be frank. These are D8s, so it's a D8 based game where you have three successes, right? Three successes and two search. So the chance of succeeding and doing a lot of things is not high, okay? It's not high. And that makes the game very challenging. And so being efficient, my box just moved just then. I'm not a jumpy person by nature, but I guess I'm just super excited right now. Um, what was I saying? Uh, so you can't rely on being able to do everything that you want to do, and sometimes that can be, of course, at your disadvantage, and it can feel like the game will just whomp you. But the game does afford you the opportunity to mitigate those kinds of things with particular tokens. It gives you everything you need to be successful. That's not to say that this is an easy game. Some mobs are very, very, very tough. Some mobs you have to put an inordinate amount of damage on a particular mob, but it might also give you ways in order to avoid that being the what you need to do. So the game will give you different options to win, and as a result of that, you are making the story, you are deciding the fate of your particular scenario. So I thought he was broken for a second. Like I said, I don't want to spoil things, but I'm very, very, very excited about this game. Every time I've played it, it has made such a memorable moment. Whether you are running away as fast as you can from fire that just won't stop spreading, regardless of your attempts to stop the fire from spreading, or there is a mob of people running around and you're trying to navigate around it, or you just say fuck it and you go for the mob and you just happen to roll hot, as a certain friend of mine's did, and was able to kill the mob, and you're like, yeah, only for the next turn the mob to come back. The game is app based. As I say, the game will tell you how to set up tiles, and you will go through the app, unlocking parts of the map as you walk through the scenario. So the app does a lot of the heavy lifting. I wouldn't look at it as being an app game as much as I'd look at it as being a uh, a condensed a condensed tabletop role playing game with an app that's acting as the GM, and you have a little bit more confined abilities that you can do, but you're still rolling dice. You're still getting equipment. You're still trying to figure out as a group, as a party, how do we solve this problem that is being presented to us. And as a result, I've had a lot of success with this game with people who've come from like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, sorry, or GURP games, generally speaking. Those kinds of players get it very quickly. It's not to say that this is not a complicated game. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different cards. There's cards that apply status effects, depending on whether it's physical or psychological. It's important to note that this is a game predominantly based in a Lovecraftian kind of world. So whatever you know about Lovecraft, apply a lot of that to Mansions of Madness. Okay, it's a Lovecraftian game, even if some scenarios remove the game and you as players away from that to a certain extent. Some of the scenarios that are available you have access to are just simple whodunits, right? It's got nothing to do with anything supernatural. It's just simple whodunits. But because the game mechanisms themselves are so strong, you can apply you can make up your own scenarios and do it that way. Now, there's a couple of things that I do need to mention first. How long have we been talking? 10 minutes. Okay, there's a couple of things I need to mention. When you put into the app the expansions that you have, I would limit which expansions you say you have depending on which scenario you want to do. Okay? What I mean by that is if you put in you have everything, the game will randomize all of the tiles and monsters that will potentially become available in the game or might have an impact on the game. And when you, I mean, I think there's probably a good maybe 60, 70 models in here. Not that many mobs, of course, or pardon me, types of mobs, but there's a lot going on. But there are, I would say, probably 300 tiles, right? So if you tell the game on the app that you have everything, then if you play a scenario, it has access to everything and it will tell you to find tiles from expansion B25 and you have to go through. And so if you do buy everything, and I would encourage you to do so, just tell the app that you have the base game and whichever expansion you're playing. That way you get more of those that expansion content and less of other things, and it'll make the setup easier and the teardown easier. I will say if you have this much content for the game as I have, again, let me try and show you how much of this game. Uh, this is tiles to the bottom, and then there are double space tiles. There are it's so much content that restricting the availability of that content in the game in the app I think is kind of, it's not just important, I think it's essential, to be frank. I wouldn't want to play this saying, I wouldn't want to do a scenario of Mansions of Madness and tell it that I have everything, because then I will be spending most of the time hunting through this box for a tile. And they're all double, all these tiles are double sided. So when I told you that the stack is this big, doubled with then double tiles on top, there are an inordinate amount of cards of tiles to go through in order to find what the app might be telling you to look for. But uh, do I should I do I how do I say this? For me, because I love this game so much, I would encourage anyone to just go out and buy it all. A lot of this content, I don't know how accessible it is anymore, and it might be a little bit expensive. So I would say buy the base game. Don't play the first scenario, because I think the first scenario is not the greatest, if I remember rightly, with the circle and the priests. I think, if I remember rightly, I would buy the base game, buy the base set, play through all of the scenarios. If you like what the game is doing, know that there are better scenarios in the expansions, and there are better scenarios that have been made by players who just love the game. It's one of the few times where I can legitimately say that for most people who like board games, certainly I think for all people who like TTRPGs, this game has earned its place amongst the greatest games ever made. And that's about as high a compliment and high a testament to how high a compliment I can give to this game, and the testament of the impact this game has had on me. And I've played this game with people who don't play board games but are TTRPGers. I play this with people who are board gamers. I've played this with, I have played this with someone who wasn't a board gamer, and they liked it. We played an easier scenario, but I think it. it's not going to work with everyone. Some people are not going to like the nature of the game. They're not going to like the Cthulhu theme, even though some of the scenarios are not Cthulhu. Some people are going to bounce off how intricate the game can feel at times because you're getting individual items which help you to complete certain aspects of your scenario. Within the app has puzzles which you need to solve in order to gain access to new rooms or to gain items that you need in order to complete the scenario. Those kinds of things. There's a lot going on, and I would say if there's any negative criticism I can have of the game is that they threw every single idea into the box. They threw every single idea into the box, which can work, does work oftentimes very well, but for new people can just be a little bit much. Um, but for me, having played this game as much as I have, it's very easy for me now to pick this game up and to play it even solo and have a genuinely great time. Playing this solo with more than one character is or playing this solo with one character is difficult. The game, I if there's another criticism I can make of the scenarios is that the scenarios are not necessarily balanced for all player counts. Some scenarios are going to be harder at lower player counts than others, and vice versa, just because of how the scenario has been made. The scenarios are all really nice. Some of them are nicer than others, of course. But know that if you have fewer characters on the board, you necessarily have fewer actions to do what you need to do in order to complete the scenario. So even if you're playing with one player, maybe playing with four characters on the board is the way to go. And in fact, that's what I do when I'm playing. Just know that that's a lot to keep track of, and it's a lot to keep in mind. There are certain aspects of the game, and again, this is why it's kind of a kitchen sink of ideas kind of game. There are certain things that can happen which can cause there to be a secret traitor, or if they become crazy, they what's it called? Specific. You can become crazy if you take too much psychological damage in the game, and that can cause you to have a secret win fulfillment condition, which can cause you then to work at odds with the rest of the team. And if you're not bracing for that and you don't know that that might happen, then that can be a bit of a feels bad moment because the person who's gone crazy might win because they fulfilled their I'm crazy condition, but that condition might be necessarily at the expense of everyone else, right? So you might go in thinking it's a cooperative game, and then by chance now all of a sudden it's a secret traitor game, which yeah, it's that's kind of a feels bad moment. And that's happened to me once. I don't it doesn't bother me too much. I have Dead of Winter, which I really like. But for some people, they may be like, well, that's kind of bullshit because we've done what the game's asked us to do, but now we've lost because they went crazy because they didn't manage their didn't manage their psychological health well enough, and so they got just happened to pull a card that's given them a condition which was easy for them. Vice versa, that condition might be impossible for them, and that can happen. You can get an impossible win condition if you go crazy or if the game gives it to you. So know that each scenario is its own experience. Look at the box as a box of opportunity and of potential for amazing moments. I've spoken a long time now. I mean, it is what it is. I love the game. I'd say it's in my top five easily in my top five board games of all time. If I could make a game even halfway as good as this, I would be very, 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 very content with my ability as a designer. Um, it's a fantastic game. Not for the light of heart. I wouldn't say this is your first game in your board game collection, but it might be. If you played Betrayal on the Hill, if you played a TTRPG, then fire on. If you don't know what any of those things are, maybe avoid Mansions of Madness for a little bit. Um, Nah, fuck it. Nah, even if you're new to board games, just pick it up and give it a blast. Give it a whirl. The app does a lot of the work for you. Um, I will say, okay, my last not jab. It's not a jabber. It's just a little negative at the game. Is I don't think the rules are taught extremely well, and at times you can find yourself flicking through the learn to play as opposed to the people like this about Fantasy Flight games. I don't think I have ever. Not when you have there's a rules reference and there's a learn to play, and the learn to play might have things that are not in the rules reference, and vice versa. And that's kind of so you might find yourself flicking through rules a little bit if you haven't played it in a while, or if you're new to board games, heavier board games like this. I think it's fair to call this a heavy board game. Not the heaviest of board games, of course not, but for this style of game, it's probably the heavier of adventure games unless you're playing like Mage Knight or something like that. This is pretty involved, and we've seen that. We've seen that this has been pushed more and more to heaviness by games like Destinies and others, which are also adventure games where you're putting tiles out, but are much more streamlined in their rule set. So bear that in mind. It's a heavier game, but boy, is it the it's a Pandora's box of moments that you will talk about forever. Preston is the main moment that we have. There's other moments, but Preston is a whirling death machine of blades and angst and hate, and he still got on the boat in the end. He killed everything. The dice. Oh my goodness. My friend Ethan played Preston, and mobs are meant to be hard in this game. It's meant to be hard. You shouldn't be able to easily kill things. But something happened that night on that table with these dice and with Preston, and Preston just he decided enough was enough. He had had enough of all the smack talk. All these monsters had been talking to him in the box, and he was going to teach them a lesson. And he did, and he survived, and he got on the boat, and we all escaped. It's those kinds of moments that I think board games are built to create in a much more visceral sense than playing a video game online. And I say that as someone who has I think like 4,000 hours in Day of Defeat and Counter Strike. Um, Board games give you that tangible. We've all done it together, or it's just something visceral about the physical presence with people going through the same outstanding experience that I think elevates board games above most, if not all, of our entertainment mediums. So, Mansions of Madness, I can't say enough about it. Buy the game, buy the base set to start with, try it out. If you love it as much as I do, you will find yourself with a big, heavy box and a lot of models on your table to paint so that you can enjoy this game to its ultimate and to its max. So my voice is starting to go a little bit. My name is Simon Adams of Moonstar Board Games. Thank you so much. I really hope you check out Mansions of Madness.